Before we get started, inducting Moon, I want to thank Al Feeney and Neer, all his crew. Dick DeRozier gave me the call. At first I said, no, there's got to be somebody else. But the more I thought about it, Moon was kind of my idol, and when he retired, I took over his ride. Before we get started, I have a letter from Moon and my car owner, Joe Fontana, that I'd like to read. It's dated January 16th. Mr. Al Feeney, President of NEAR. Dear Mr. Feeney, my friend, my first preference is to be with you, with all my associates and friends tonight at this annual Hall of Fame induction. As circumstances demand, I am unable to attend this event honoring Moon Burgess and all the other Hall of Fame inductees. This prestigious event highlights the accomplishments of the NEAR organization, which ranks above the very best efforts nationally, bringing together participants of an era that has been long forgotten. Moon's actions on the racetrack deserves the recognition being demonstrated here tonight. As a car owner of the Flying Jimmy #1 Eagle, which Moon drove to numerous victories, I can say he was the very best of his time. He would have made an excellent candidate for Teddy Roosevelt. There was none better than Moon gassing the GMC 6 out of the turns at Bridgeport, Candlelight Stadium, West Haven, Plainville, and the Park. His best defense was his brother Frankie's fist cuffing on the pit road. I now reside in California. I now reside in California, but become a NEAR Life member due to Moon's influence, which undoubtedly spread because of his wife Rita recruiting him. I wish to thank Phil Mitchell, Walt Smith for contacting me regarding this affair. It is my privilege and acknowledgement to enclose a check for NEAR for $1,000 to be used as the organization wishes. Meanwhile, I will continue building midget motors and record land speed with my GMC 6. Have a good evening. Yours truly, Joseph A. Fontana. Okay, now we'll get down to the induction of Moon, my old buddy. Moon Burgess. Richard Moon Burgess, the first inductee to speed, come on the occasion of his birth, as he was born in an ambulance, speeding along Meriden County and West Main Street, rushing to the hospital. He has always used this as his excuse for liking to go fast. By the mid-1940s, just after the war, a friend showed Moon a copy of the Illustrated Speedway News. He found the paper contents interesting, and soon after him and his friends went to their first midget race. He describes himself as becoming instantly hooked. From then on, he chased the midgets to tracks like West Haven, Bridgeport, West Springfield, and Deer Park, traveling with some friends that they scraped together enough money. Soon Moon was introduced to the world of stock car racing when his employer's regular driver backed out on him. 19-year-old Moon was easily persuaded to take over the driving duties. This would prove to be eventful, as it would not only be his first time behind the wheel of a stock car, but it's the very first race that he ever saw. That was in 1947 at Thompson, when he drove a black 37 Ford Coupe outfitted with a 1936 Ford engine. He fondly remembers his ride as having carpet for a firewall, tow rope for a safety belt, and a triple X and mounted on with masking tape on the door and on the rear trunk lid. Either because of, in spite of all this, after a couple of laps, Moon was hooked. He simply claims you just had to be there. He attributes his rapid success in the infancy of his career to the education he received by watching and competed against the open cockpit drivers, especially Ted Tappett, Al Keller. On the track education they supplied, Moon fondly remembers the tricks they played on him in the pits. Frequently, Moon would climb into the cockpit only to find that they had spread peanuts on his seat. And one night at Bridgeport, he climbed in to find a rubber snake in his seat. In the end, he found revenge at holding his own against the winning the title of High Point Man at Avon Cherry Park. Over the span of his relatively short, yet much celebrated career, Moon's aggressive driving style enabled him to be a threat both on dirt and on asphalt. During the late 1940s, and early 50s, he raced and won most everywhere in the Northeast. He captured 63 features. Incidentally, in the program, it says that he captured 6 features. He captured 63 features, winning along with the 1949 championship. However, we remember most vividly Moon, who best known by piloting the Joe Fontana 6-cylinder GMC Flying Eagle #1, belching its flame of fire out the exhaust. Moon regularly bested the likes of Ed Flemke, Buddy Krebs, Gene Bergen, Sparky Belmont, Redfoot, Ted Tappett, Giacomo Giacomo. I think all but one of those are in the hall that he joins. One of the highlights of Moon's career come at Plainville Stadium, where one night he became up against the likes of Indy 500 competitor Big Boy Al Keller. The 25 lap wound down, the big track ace looked to be a sure winner. He had undoubtedly Moon clipped away at Keller's half-lap lead. On the final lap, Keller come into lap traffic. Moon grabbed the lead on the outside of the third turn in spectacular style. Moon held on for the win. After the show, when Keller put his arm around Moon and said, "Nice job, son," it stood out as being the proudest moment of his career. In more recent times, his two grown boys, Richie and Jamie, have had the opportunity to drive his restored coupe, which is out in the front here. It's a nice job, Moon. We come here tonight to fondly remember the times when driving ability, not fancy equipment, earned a driver's respect and success in this timeless area. Moon made an enduring mark on stock car racing here in the Northeast. Please join me in welcoming the Meriden Flash, the Silver City skipper, Moon Burgess, to the podium.
Before I get started, I'd like to congratulate all the inductees. You boys are true legends of our sport, and I'm deeply honored to be in your company. I've been told that on this special day it's customary to tell a story or two, so I'd like to share one of my family's favorites. One night at Riverside Park, I was leading the feature in the Jimmy with only 2 laps left. As I was working my way around a lap car, he drove into my left rear and took me completely out. I had given him plenty of room, and at the time I felt like he did it intentionally. Now, I always prided myself as trying to be a clean driver who never got mad behind the wheel. But that night I was steamed. I mean, I was really upset. I'd never been so mad. So as I was spinning, I ramped it in second gear and put the pedal to the floor. Did a 360 and kept on going. But unfortunately lost the lead in the process and ended up in the back in the pack somewhere. On the cool down lap, I kept digging and went looking for the guy that spun me. I finally caught up with him coming out of 4 and got right on his rear bumper. Now, keep in mind that the Flying Eagle's inline 6 was all torque. Even with the brakes locked up, maybe he only had one wheel brake, I don't know. I was able to push him down the front straightaway and build up a good head of steam. By the time we reached number 1, we were flying. So I slammed the brakes on and parked them in the first turn wall. I thought, I said, this car belongs to Big Pete Paranzino, and he's part of the Milford Mafia. Now what do I do? Do I make a run for it? No. I headed for the pits. So, like a swarm of angry bees, this crowd surrounded the car. My brother Frank, who was our self-appointed crew chief and bodyguards, stuck his head in the window and said, "You stay in that car." "Yes, sir, Frank." I didn't have any plans on going anywhere. Suddenly we saw someone frantically pushing his way through the mob, heading straight for us. As soon as the man broke from the mob, my brother ran up and punched him right in the face. Bad, Frank. Laid him right out. So from the ground, the guy looks up and says, Frank, what did you hit me for? I'm on your side." Yeah, that's gospel. That night, I never thought my wildest dreams I would be inducted into the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. I thought they were going to kill me and throw my body in the Connecticut River. And I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for the support of a lot of wonderful people. First, I'd like to thank New England Auto Racers selection and nominating committees, New England Antique Racers, officers and directors, and advisors, and everyone who made this great honor possible. You folks keep the history of auto racing alive and make sure that the story and characters who built it live on. I thank my car owners for giving me the opportunity to drive great equipment and do what I love. I thank Pete Hazelwood, who gave me my number 2 ride. I thank Ron Olson, pit crew extraordinaire, and Joe Fontana, who built the GMC-powered Flying Eagle that carried me to many victories. Joe was always an innovator. He used to measure the track with a slide ruler, and he used jack and bolts and stagger at a time when things like that weren't heard of, unless we were at the beer garden up at the park. I'd like to thank all the wonderful friends I've made throughout the years for always standing by me and lending a helping hand. I'd like to thank Randy and Cindy Hall for towing my car from Coventry down to Durham, back up here, back to Coventry, back to Durham again. Thanks, Randy. And finally, I'd like to thank I'd like to thank my family for their endless support and love. This honor wouldn't have been possible without you. I'd like to thank family friend Tolstoy for flying all the way from Chicago to be here. And finally, I'd like to thank the most lovely lady in the world, my wife, Rita. Yes, ma'am. Can you help Mom up? You have always been there for me. You're my right arm and best friend. And I want everyone to know that on this Valentine's Day, another 12 days or so from now, Rita and I will have been married 50 wonderful years. We heard the story about Al Keller, but I'll say it again. In 1952, I went to Indy and had a chance to watch my boyhood hero, big boy Al Keller, run the 500. He was really my hero. And soon after, he came up north to try out for Ted Tappett's number 23 ride. Ted had gone to run Le Mans, and the 23 car was open. We started side by side on the last row, and I followed him up through traffic. Soon we were running 1 and 2 bumper to bumper. On the last lap, going into 4, he slid up behind some lap cars and had to lift. I dove to the inside, just beating him to the wire for the win. After the race, Al Keller, my hero, came up to me, put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Good race, son." To win the praise of a driver I held in such high regard was a highlight of my career. But today, to earn the respect of my peers and the racing community means more to me. Thank you and God bless.